Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Hamid. Today's video is an interesting one. I've been asked by a few followers on the channel that I tell them a little bit about how to identify aircraft while they're in the air or while at the airport. So what we'll do today is look at the two big manufacturers of aircraft, commercial aircraft, Boeing and Airbus, and some of, I think, two or three of their most common models, and I'll probably give you a couple of stories along the way. Boeing is a US aircraft manufacturer, and Airbus is a consortium of basically owned by a few European countries, Germany, France, and England to be specific, UK to be specific. Let's look at how we can identify some of the most common ones. So the most common aircraft type, or the workhorse of both the Boeing and aircraft, I guess, is A320 for Airbus industry and Boeing 737, which is the bottom one. They are used for short haul routes, pretty much high density 3x3 seating on both the aircraft, and carry anywhere between 160 to 190 passengers. Now, how would you be able to identify them? The most important thing, I guess, is the shape of the nose. So when you look at an Airbus 320, that's got a curved, or rather a round nose, compared to a Boeing 737, which is a little bit pointier nose. That's probably the most obvious giveaway when you're looking at a 737 and a 320 come in to land or come take off from a certain airport and you're watching it. So look at the nose. The pointier nose are usually Boeing 737s. Another thing that you probably should look at is the shape of the cockpit window. A320 has a very squarish last window, and it doesn't form a curve or anything. It's just a straight line, three windows that you can see generally from the side, and they go across to the other side. Whereas a 737, a Boeing 737, really has this curved, angled window. The last one is more of a quadrilateral rather than a square. That should give a giveaway. Other than the nose, when you see a nose and a straight window, a round nose and straight window, it's a 320. Otherwise, a pointed nose with this strange last window will be a 737. Once they've landed and you can see them on a runway or a taxiway, notice the clearance from the ground and the nose landing gear. Airbus is usually a little bit higher and a little bit longer, whereas the 737, they both have the opening flaps, which you can't probably see here, but 737 is lower, and that's probably why you see a lot of people even sitting on the 737 engine. The clearance is very low, and I talk about the nose gear, but also the clearance from the ground is much lower on 737s. Those are the four really good giveaways, and the last bit I guess you can always do is look at the tail. 737 tail is sort of more, when you look at the tail, it's sort of sleek, longer, and a 320 tail is sort of wider and a little bit of the ugly shape, if I call it. So that's another giveaway. So look out for those 4 or 5 things that should generally tell you whether the aircraft is a 737 Boeing aircraft or an Airbus A320. Of late, there's a couple of other things about Airbus 320 that you would want to know. That Airbus 320 is the main aircraft of the family. Airbus 319 is a smaller version, and Airbus 321 is an extended version. A 321 generally has 2 middle doors as well, one just before the wings and one just after the wings, whereas 319 and 320 have only one set of middle exit doors. So when you see the rounded nose and when you see the windows, when you figure out it's an Airbus, just look at the size. The little ones are usually 319s. The longish ones that look like they've been extended out are 321s. But generally you will see A320s, which is about this size. Another thing that you should probably look at, and I'm not really sure if that's just an Air India thing or maybe there's more than that. Generally, there's a single landing wheel on the back, 2 sides each, and the nose wheel, so a single bogie they call it. Some A320s, particularly a few that was bought by Air India and Indian Airlines in the late 1990s or mid to late 1990s, actually have a double bogie landing gear. I'm not aware of any other airline, but I do know that some of these aircraft have recently started to be retired at Air India and they now ended up in other airlines. So if you see a double bogie landing gear, it's definitely an Airbus 320 and has spent some time on the Indian airfields which are probably not the best when it comes to quality of the tarmac, and that's probably why the airline decided to go with a double bogie one. So that's pretty much the initial thing about 737. Now about A320s. 737, a newer version, is called a 73 MAX. What you'll see different there is the winglets. So when you look at this, there's winglets here that sort of go up and down, which is probably one of the newer things you'll start to see. You'll see a cone at the end of, rather than a little rounded thing. It's more a cone at the end. Still has the pointed nose, still has the low clearance, or still have the funny shaped window in the end. The engines are newer, the propulsion system's newer. You probably won't be able to see that, but what you will see is that when you start to see a little bit of these new winglets, when you see tail cones, it's probably one of the new members of the 737 family, the 737 MAX, which unfortunately is actually grounded at the moment. And around the world, there's all these 737 MAXes that are grounded, and that's purely because of a few things that Boeing tried to put into 737 to make it a little bit more compatible, I would say, competitive. They try to put in computer control stability system called MCAS, the sensors of which were on the nose, and they basically measure the angle of the flight, and the horizontal stabilizer at the which the tail wings at the bottom trim the adjust accordingly. As the nose get pushed down to reduce the stall, you generally start to reduce the risk of a stall. What that started to do is that if the sensor is reading wrong, MCAS starts to activate and push the nose down and starts to give false readings. Look at it. This was the sort of reading that the aircraft's trying to sort of correct when it's actually flying really well, and that starts to put the aircraft down, and that's caused a couple of accidents. One in Indonesia for Lion Air, and then there was an Ethiopian Airlines. Unfortunately, don't have a solution at this stage. There's a lot of airlines that have 737 MAXes in India, in Indonesia, in US. Southwest has a whole lot of them sitting on tarmac at the moment, and there's a lot ready to be delivered, but those aircraft are still out of service, grounded, and not with any airline. You don't really see many of them flying, but if and when they do start flying, remember those couple of things I told you. Those were the short-haul aircraft. Now, long-haul, the little battle between Boeing and Airbus is all about the Dreamliner 787 at the bottom, or the extra-wide Airbus A350 on top. They look pretty similar to each other, don't they? But there's a difference. There's quite a few subtle differences. I'll go with the Airbus first. Look at the strange curved single window. There's no sort of breaks in window. It's generally a dark window and very weird angles right at the front of the aircraft. The mask, which is the single, it sort of hides the true window shape. It's sort of a darkish shade at the front, and it's hard to see that. That should give you a really good indication that this is an Airbus 350, either a 900 or 1000. Generic, very ugly sort of Airbus tail. There's nothing special, nothing sleekness about it. I don't say it ugly in a negative way, but it's just what it is. That's all it is. But what you would really love is these weird looking curved winglets, weird in a very nice way. They sort of carry on and go around. If you see an Airbus 350 parked at an airport, you'll not miss those, and they'll tell you very clearly that those little rounded curved wings, not the wings, but the ends of the wings, are actually from an Airbus 350. And compare that to a 787, the Dreamliner. They've got a nice angular windows right at the front, so look at that. Unlike the 787, which has a weird one, this still is not square, but it's a really good angular window, and it's got a really sleek nose. It's not pointy enough, and you can clearly see it when you see a 787, you know. 787 in mid-flight, generally you can see graceful curved wing tips, and the wings sort of go slow, a little bit more flexible to go upwards and downwards. The engine covers usually have this little curved edged design at the end, and then the tail is nice angular tail fin. It's not the broad Airbus one, it's a very angular Boeing 787 or a Boeing wing, so that should tell you, those little things should tell you the difference between a 787 and Airbus A350. But do look for the windows, do look for the wing tips, and do look at the tail, and that should be probably good enough to give you which plane it is. The next one that to look out for, and it's very obvious, is pretty much the large jets, the Boeing 747-400s, also called the Queen of the Skies. It's been around since the 70s. and has been the epitome of the luxurious travel. And Airbus A380, which came out in the late 2000s. Both of them are double-decker planes, so how do you then see the difference between? You see both of them come in. Look at the shape of the nose. 787, or 747, sorry, has a really good pointed nose. The cockpit is on the top floor. You can clearly see that windows pretty much go well past the cocktail. The generally first class used to be, and you can. It's just very clear, very nice looking plane that way. Both of them are 4-engine planes, but the shape of the nose, the rounded nose of aircraft of Airbus comes back here. A380 is really rounded and big, and 747 is a little bit more sleek and nice looking, if you put it that way. You may start to think that I'm a Boeing fan, but I'm just trying to put it out as I believe it is. So 380 is huge. Shape of the engines you'll see is very, very different. Now, one of the things about Boeing, and I'm no way promoting Lufthansa in any way, it's just easier to sort of show you an airline that actually has both the aircraft flying for it, so you can see the difference exactly. So bigger engines, a little bit more sleek engines for 747-400s, whereas 380s actually have a little bit more of a broader, bigger engines. 747 is now also available in long range 747-8 model, which is what is competing against A380 now, and Lufthansa does have a few of those. The upper deck is shorter. Now that's where the old business class used to be for 747. There was a first class right under the cabin, say business class just behind, and then economy. Whereas Lufthansa just has a whole second tier. It's a double decker in real sense, whereas Lufthansa does have this, the 747 have this really raised second tier. It gives it a very distinct look. So when you look at the height, Airbus 380 is much more taller, comparatively taller. It's about 16 feet taller, and when they're standing side by side, you'll be able to see it anyway. A lot of 747s have started to now become freighters. They've lived their life. It's been around since 1974. It still is the Air Force One. It still is a lot of national carriers or the heads of state carriers. 747 is still a really good aircraft. It is still one of those aircrafts you love to watch take off and land. It's just a really graceful, very distinct aircraft. But a lot of them have lived their lives. The demand, and they do consume a lot more fuel, so they're starting to become, you're starting to see a lot more cargo 747s float around. So Qatar, Singapore, Swiss, Lufthansa, some of the cargo companies like Atlas or FedEx, or even Qantas now flies 747s as freighters. Cathay Pacific does, and you would be able to see a lot of them across the world. 747, if you're at a major airport, the chances are you will definitely see a 747 freighter come in. Not many 380s are in as freighters, so if you see a freighter one, chances are it's a 747. What I might do is, before I finish off, just talking about the Airbus 3 family, Airbus family literally. So we talked about the 310, we talked about 320, we talked about 21 and 319. 310 was another one that was actually part of the 320 family. It's probably not sold as much anymore. And Airbus 300 was a double-aisled aircraft, which probably did really well in the 80s and the 90s, but it's not sold anymore. Airbus 330 is something that I should have compared against, say, a Boeing 747, but 330 is sort of the mid to long haul version. Still looks pretty much like the rounded nose, a little bit bigger in size, which makes it look like a Boeing aircraft, but is actually an Airbus aircraft. So it comes in 300 and 200 versions. So yes, depending on your length of routes that you're looking at, either one of them can be good. We talked about 350 and 380, and I guess the only other aircraft in the family that we should talk about is a 4-engined Airbus 340. Now, for a long time, Airbus 340 flew the longest flights, Singapore to US, Dubai, Middle East to US, and those sort of flights. That used to be Airbus 340. It did consume a lot of fuel, and it's starting to lose Virgin Atlantic flew 340s. A lot of European airlines flew 340s down to Australia and South America. South African Airways still flies 340s all the way to Europe, America and Australia. So there's still a few floating around, but Airbus 330s and the relaxation of rules for flying for two-engine aircraft has actually led to sort of a semi-demise of Airbus 340s. So if you do see, you know how to identify the Airbus aircraft. If you see a longish one come in after a long flight, it's likely to be an Airbus 330, which is very traditional, no curved winglets, no sort of pointed nose. It's just a normal aircraft with the shacklets or the winglets on the end, double engine, and has two middle exit frame. On the other hand, when you look at Boeing, we have talked about the 737s. We didn't talk about the 600, the 700, 800, 900, and we did talk about the MAX. But then 737 has been available previously, even in smaller versions. There's a 717 that I could not sort of show you in this picture, but that's also one of the things that I really wanted to show you guys. 777 is the only thing that we didn't talk about. So 767 doesn't come anymore. It's not sold anymore, but 777, 200 and 300, they come in extended version and long version. They are really longish and pretty much a Boeing front. They, again, like Airbus 330, have nothing special. You should be able to identify if you see an aircraft that looks like a Boeing aircraft, it is a 777 in most cases. So when you compare them, I guess a little bit, when you're at a major airport, you'll probably see all these long haul flights come in. Airbus 330, as like I said before, is probably the smallest version. 330-200, Airbus 350-800, Airbus 330, which is sort of the rounded straight wings with chocolates. 350-900, 350,000, we talked about them, and Airbus 380, which is the biggest plane that Airbus has on their summary. On the other hand, long haul, 787-800, 787-900, the Dreamliners, and there's a new 787-10X, which should be in the market really soon. Same time, 787-777-300, and there's also 777-200 used for mid to short, longish routes, not very too long, but that's where 300 ER comes in. But there's a 200 LR as well, which is a longer version of this, and 747-800. And I guess that's the difference between the two Boeing aircrafts. You're more likely to see Dreamliners and 350s and 777s and 330s and 747s and 380s generally. And if you're at a shorter domestic airport, you're likely to see 737s and Airbus 320s, or one of the family from 320 aircraft from a 320 family. So this should give you a good idea about how to identify some of those aircraft when you see them. Any questions, check them in the comment section below. Subscribe if you like it. Any questions, I'll try and give you the answers about your aviation questions. Love all the questions that come in, and all the requests for putting information. So this was a request that came in from a couple of you last week, so I thought it's probably a really good idea to do this now, considering I was traveling this week. It was great. I was able to get a few pictures that we could check in. I'll finish this video now. Thank you for watching, and I'll finish this video with a really graceful picture of a Boeing 747-400 in Qantas livery taking off from Sydney Airport. So thank you guys, thank you for watching, and enjoy.
What's the tune for 10? That's me.